Now, moving away from probably the most impossible character to reroll for in a damage dealer, I want to talk about a support type character. In this class, it's going to be the Abundance Path, and this is going to be Bailu. Now, as you get into harder content in Star Rail, you're going to want to have a way to actually heal your characters, not just provide shields and support. And there are other options for this, but Bailu's a pretty good option if you sort of are rerolling and can't get what you want. She's going to be one of the only 2 abundance classes that we can really have access to in Star Rail, and she's going to be the only 5-star abundance class. Her skill is going to be able to heal multiple teammates, while the ultimate's going to not only just heal you, but also provide Invigorated, which can heal you again. She's a fantastic, supportive, tanky healer option, and she's one of the only ones that we have access to, so she is a pretty solid pickup for those reasons. But I do think that if you're rerolling for a targeted specific character, she's not going to be in the high priority category for you on your account. Now, even though this is a 5-star focused tier list, I do want to touch on some of the 4 stars that we have access to in Honkai Star Rail, because if you gain access to some of these as you're rerolling, this could be a very solid indicator that you should maybe keep that account if you get one of the other high priority characters listed here. Now, Ting Yun is going to be a 4-star character that if you have her and a 5-star that you're comfortable with keeping, that you like, you should probably keep that reroll in that account. I don't want to go too far into this and why she's good, but basically she is very good at targeting the gameplay loop that Honkai Star Rail has, where it revolves around using basic attacks as well as skills that require skill points to gain access to energy so you can use your character's ultimates. She does do the traditional stuff like buffing characters and allowing them to do more damage with attack buffs as well as damage buffs and allowing them to do extra lightning damage. But the thing we're here for is how efficient she is in this core gameplay loop, because her ultimate allows you to give 50 energy to another character in your party and increase the damage that they do. This is so powerful because 50 energy is the equivalent of a character needing to take 2 turns, 1 for their basic attack and 1 for their skill, which will use a skill point, each generating 20 and 30 energy respectively. Her ultimate does this alone for another character. She's also very fast as she gains a speed buff in her kit as a passive. So she's very good at generating energy for herself, generating energy for teammates, and sort of abusing this core gameplay loop that Star Rail has. Su Sheng is also going to be a very powerful 4-star character. She's a hunt path DPS character, and just like all the other DPS characters in Star Rail, she's very skill point hungry. Although her skills are very powerful, you want to be able to use her skills because she's going to be able to do not just large amounts of damage, but she has a follow-up attack called the Sword Stance, which has a chance to activate, but if the enemy has its shield broken, it is a 100% chance to activate. And then after using her ultimate, you're going to get extra activations of these Sword Stance attacks, making her actually a little bit more efficient skill point usage wise than someone else in Star Rail. And this becomes even better once you get her first Eidolon. And I don't really want to talk about Eidolons that much for characters in Star Rail, but her being a 4-star character, her Eidolon is a game changer because when you use a skill on a broken character, you're going to get that skill point back, which makes her very, very powerful and very easy to use. And once again, sort of breaks this core gameplay loop that Honkai Star Rail has, where it wants you to use basic attacks that are weaker to generate skill points. If you have that Eidolon though, with Su Sheng, you can just kind of use your skill points on her whenever you want if someone's broken, because you'll get that right back upon use. And as a 4-star character, she's fantastic. I'm a big fan of her, and you also get to throw a giant chicken at someone. So big ups there. Arlen's gonna be another fantastic DPS character if you get him in a reroll. The main driving and selling point of Arlen is, unlike a lot of the other characters, I think he's the only one actually, his actual skill doesn't cost skill points to use, which is a big deal in this game because a lot of the combat is balanced around which characters you're going to be using skills on, because your skill points are shared between your entire party. So you have to decide which character is going to be using your skill points, and him being your main DPS character, his skill doesn't actually cost skill points. It costs some of his max health instead. So you're going to be draining Arlen's HP, being able to be very efficient with Arlen though on your party. Your damage dealer is going to be doing damage dealer things, and then you can shield him up with someone else's skill points. Maybe you have access to a character like Bailu who can heal your whole party, and while she's using her skill, healing everyone up and getting access to her ultimate to heal everyone up again, Arlen's just gonna be sitting there smacking everyone with the elemental skill for big damage, pretty much every turn. Payla's going to be a fantastic character for you as well. She's going to be one of the only nihilism characters in the game between Payla as well as Welt here that you're going to have access to early on in Honkai Star Rail. She's a cryo character, so anytime you shield break, you're gonna have access to a little bit of crowd control with the frozen attribute. You're also going to be able to reduce enemies' defenses with Payla, which is a huge deal in some circumstances. So she's gonna be a fantastic character for you to work with as a supporting type role in Star Rail as well. Defense down is going to be something that can scale very high or very low depending on the content that you're doing. And I wouldn't be surprised if Payla in the end times, as we get into more advanced levels in Honkai Star Rail, won't be one of the possibly best characters to invest in at the time being, because there's not a lot of characters that have that very powerful defense break that Payla does have. And we have Hook here. Now Hook is probably going to be one of the lesser of the characters here. Hook's pretty fine as a destruction character. You do need to charge up her skills to get the most value out of her. So for farming, she can be a little bit slower, but she can work as one of your damage dealers if you see her as you're re-rolling. Now back to the 5 stars here, we're gonna have access to Bronya, and Bronya is gonna be one of the best characters that you can try to re-roll for, because she's gonna be a fantastic harmony character. She might be a little bit of skill hungry, sort of like Shu Shang was when we went over her as a 4-star character, but Bronya's skill is going to advance someone forward, give them damage buffs. She's going to have access to 100% crit chance. Even though she doesn't have the highest multipliers of all time, she's going to be able to be built very easily for you. And she's not going to be usable like she was in the beta, because in the beta you were able to use her skill on herself, give her a damage buff, basically push her up, and then while she has that damage buff in the 100% crit chance, you'd be able to hit somebody and generate a skill point. So you'd use a skill point on yourself, take an extra turn, regenerate that skill point. You'd basically have free damage with her. You can't do that anymore, but she's still a fantastic character. So she does lose a little bit of love and power from being your sub DPS, just sort of do it all character. So even though that doesn't exist anymore and you can't abuse her giant energy gain that you used to be able to before by using her skill on herself, giving her an extra turn, using her normal attack to generate even more energy, she's still fantastic because she has her passive that when she uses her basic attack, she's going to actually move her action forward by up to 33%, which is a fantastic thing. She's still going to help facilitate and gain skill points for you. She just doesn't entirely break the game like she did before. And her elemental burst, her ultimate, as I should say in Honkai Star Rail, is very powerful, giving your allies attack buff as well as crit damage buff, and then increasing her crit damage even further for herself than she does for other characters, which is going to be very nice, especially early game, because she's got that built-in 100% crit chance from her first trace. So this crit damage buff and this attack buff works very nice with her. You really can't go wrong with Bronya on your account, and I would say she's probably one of, if not the highest priority character that you could potentially try to re-roll for in Star Rail. Now we're gonna move on to one of my favorites, which is Himeko, and this is a very good character. However, I'm not gonna put her in second priority or good, and let me explain why. Because Himeko, her strength really sort of varies in the kind of content that's released. If the difficult content has more enemies, she's gonna be better. If the difficult content has things that you can shield break with the fire element and there's multiple enemies, then she's going to be absolutely insane. If you're fighting a single target boss and they're, you know, not weak to fire element, then she's going to be a little bit worse. So she could be very, very powerful. She could be a little bit of, you know, fine, very good, but not like sort of insane if she's not in the right element for her kit to actually shine. So Himeko, I'm going to put her in the good category. She did get a little bit of a buff prior to launch of Honkai Star Rail, where basically one of her passives got changed from her being able to activate it when she attacks with a certain skill, and instead it's when you attack with basically any skill. It's going to scale very, very well into later stages. She's going to scale very well into areas that have multiple enemies. However, when you have a character that is focused on AoE and there's not a lot of AoE for you to do, she's going to be feeling a little more middling than when she could be put into an environment that she would excel in. So I'm going to put her in the good category for right now. Now we talked about how good Bailu is and how she's got a pretty high priority because there's not very many abundance characters in the game. So you would think that our boy Gepard is going to be in the same circumstance. He's pretty decent as a preservation character, but the sad thing about this man is even though he is really good and he's one of the only preservation characters in the game, The Fire Trailblazer that you can gain access to for free is also a preservation character and also is pretty dang good. So I wouldn't try to re-roll for a second preservation character when you already get a very solid preservation character at the start of the game and as you play the game. So I'm gonna have to put him down in the good category if you want to have an extra preservation character moving in for your second team into the later stages of Honkai Star Rail. You could do that. However, he's not gonna really help you farm up faster in the early game, do a lot of content in the early game, because you're already gonna have access to someone of his character class. Now, Welt here is going to be a very fantastic character as well. We talked about how Pela was one of the only nihilism characters. Now, Welt's a pretty good character too, and I want to go in on Welt real quick. He's a nihilism path character. He's got access to the ability to reduce speed, and he is, as of right now, one of the only imaginary damage dealers in the game for Star Rail. So his usefulness is going to depend on, and that can be pretty powerful, but just like someone like Himeko, if you have access to imaginary damage and there's imaginary weaknesses, he's going to feel a lot better if those get added to the game more, because he is so unique. And then as a nihilism character, he's got some very nice debuffs. He sort of controls the enemy speed by allowing them to be slower than you and allowing you to take more turns than the enemy. But as you get into sort of the higher end game content, I don't want to say it's time to content again, but it's this thing that I don't really feel like we should go into. It'd be its own separate video as far as cycles go. And basically, well, if you're taking more turns compared to your enemy, that's good. But at the end of the day, you're going to still need to defeat things within a certain time limit, if you want to speak, or a certain cycle limit. And so you could get a lot more use out of someone else early on that just allows you to do more damage instead of allowing you to take more turns, so you can get more rewards in some of this heart of difficulty. So I'm going to put him in the good category. He's very unique. He's got a very awesome skill set, but as a reroll target character, I can't say that he's high priority or second priority when it comes to actually spending time to reroll for a specific 5-star. Now, Yanqing's the next one, and he's going to be another 5-star hunt character that you can aim for if you don't want to reroll for Seeley, you don't want to use Su Sheng, you're aiming for a 5-star hunt character for big damage. Then Yanqing's going to be here for you as well. And being of the ice element, you're going to have all of the positive benefits that comes with, well, shield breaking enemies that are also weak to ice, with the debuffs that are associated with that. He also gets a lot of free crit chance from the elemental skill. He gets some extra crit chance from his talent and some extra crit damage. And he's got the ability to freeze enemies as well. So you're going to be able to sort of have this hunt DPS character that not only is just there for damage, but he's also going to be able to provide a little bit of crowd control support, which is going to lessen the incoming damage that enemies can do to you. And then in addition to that, Yanqing has a very nice passive ability that is going to allow him to sort of have lower odds of being attacked by enemies. So you can freeze some enemies with Yanqing, and then his survivability will be increased from that, but even further by his ability to sort of not get hit as much as other squishy damage dealers would. But he does have a couple of downsides, and this is sort of a two-pronged system here. He's got a very expensive ultimate at 140 energy, and then on top of that, he's very skill point hungry, as a damage dealer usually is. But this is the second prong with that, is that not only is he just traditionally skill point hungry like most hunt type characters, but the maximum damage you can get from using his skill points is going to be a little RNG, as he does have a talent that can give you a follow-up attack, which is very nice, but the chance for that to happen is only between 50 to 62% at max talent level. So if you don't gain access to his proc, you could have some very bad cycles where you use his skill, you try to get the extra damage, you try to get the freeze, and it just doesn't happen for you. So he could sort of hold you back in some circumstances because of that RNG nature of his account and how expensive his energy cost is for his ultimate. However, he's a very powerful hunt-based boss shredder, and if you're looking for someone who just wants to do a bunch of damage to just bosses and blow them up, he's someone that can facilitate that game plan for you very well. However, with these drawbacks and the different options that you have from trying to re-roll for other characters, as well as having access to a very powerful hunt 4-star that exists in Star Rail, I'm gonna have to put him in the good category. Now, last but not least, in one character that's super near and dear to my heart is gonna be Clara here. Now, Clara is gonna be a very make or break character. I want to go a couple things through this with Clara's abilities and kits from early game all the way to sort of mid game, end game in Honkai Star Rail. First of all, Clara's going to be a destruction character, and she's also going to be a pretty tanky destruction character. Her entire kit revolves around taking damage and counter-attacking enemies. So if you have ways to make her the target of skills, you can sort of early game just sort of tank down with someone like March 7th, who can give a character a shield and then also increase the chance for that character to be attacked. You can put that shield on Clara, counterattack enemies, use Clara's skill, damage everyone, re-damage everyone who's marked, I should say, and do a lot of interesting things that way. Now, she is a little bit slower on the farming side, and you are going to have to make a team around her to sort of make her work. And her one downside is, just like Himeko, she's going to scale and be sort of more valuable based on the type of content that you're doing. If you have a bunch of enemies, you can get them all to attack Clara, her damage is going to go through the roof and be the highest damage AoE character, I believe, in Star Rail right now, just because you can be so efficient with your turn orders, get things done with lower cycles. They all attack Clara, Clara marks them all, does counterattacks, does damage, you use her skill, she swipes them all. In just like one turn cycle, if you get all the enemies to attack you and there's like 3 or 4 enemies, well, that's 3 or 4 counterattacks. Then she gets her turn finally, she uses her skill, she hits all the enemies again, and that's a lot of AoE damage you can get out of Clara. But if there's only a single target and you can't get Clara to attack all that often, she's not counterattacking that much, then she's gonna kind of suffer in that circumstance. So I'm gonna have to put her in the good category. You could put her up in the second priority. I know, as this is a reroll guide, you could put her up there just because how good she is with some of the free characters like we just talked about with March 7th at the start of the game. And it's going to make the game incredibly easy for you, just sort of tank down and she counters everything and enemies just sort of fall to themselves. But as you get into like end game content, you want really your reroll character to be something that you can feel like you're going to be using in as much content as possible, because you only get 1 5-star, right? Unless you get super lucky, you only get 1 5-star. So if you want to aim for that 5-star, I wouldn't put her on par with like Bailu for that reason, just because she is sort of just the best abundance character that we have access to with Bailu. And yes, there is one other one as well, but it's a 4-star character. She's fine, and I think that 4-star character will probably just get power crept right away as soon as we get another abundance character. So I'm gonna have to put Clara in good, but I could be sort of pressure to move her up to second priority. Ultimately, it's gonna come down to what your play style is and what you value most as a player. As always, pull for your favorites, but this is just my general idea of how much value you can get from certain characters early game, but as well as how valuable they'll be to you as you continue playing Honkai Star Rail. With that being said, guys, like for more stuff, hit that sub, and I'll see you in the next one.